Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I am going to be talking about what annoys Aries. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Anyway, people, first thing off is as far as what I believe annoys Aries, well, people taking too long to do things. I see Aries as despising long lines in supermarkets or wherever they may be, whatever store it might be that they are at. Even waiting, having to wait on a car wash could make Aries incensed, I believe. Aries does not like people taking their time with things and procrastination. They wouldn't get along too well in many instances with a plotting Taurus. Now, it's interesting because there was an experience I had when I worked at a Kmart. As many of you may know, I have Taurus rising, and this was from experience I had with an Aries ascendant lady. And she got a little bit annoyed and exasperated at the fact that she felt I was taking my time doing things, and she just wanted to do things in a real rush, in a real hurry. So I guess I understand that a little bit. So, given that she had Aries ascendant. Now, the thing about it is Aries generally can become annoyed when they have to wait for a protracted period of time on something. I think Aries often hates to be stagnant as well. They often like to be rather active and busy. A lot of this is attributed to, I believe, Aries' very high energy level. They are often very energetic. Remember that Pisces often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Aries. So they often can be annoyed really with being perhaps lethargic or stagnant or people that exhibit those qualities. Really, being given the fact that Pisces often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Aries is what they can fear as well. And I think they could fear being overly lethargic or being relaxed for too long a period. But at the same time, these kind of qualities can often annoy Aries as well, I believe, and really qualities they could have in anathema to expressing. They don't want to be seen as lackadaisical or lazy or overly relaxed. So anyway, I think indolence can be another anathema to this sign. Aries often can also become annoyed with people that may come across as overly wimpy, passive, or non-confrontational. This could strongly exasperate Aries. Also, I think what could annoy Aries is people being overly tactful and diplomatic and perhaps mincing words. Keep in mind, Libra falls on the 7th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Aries. So really, I think that has a lot to do with it because Libra is the opposite sign of Aries. Aries also can become annoyed when they see somebody getting a raw deal, and really often when that person getting the raw deal doesn't have the gumption to make a stand for themselves, or doesn't have the ability to stand up for his or herself. Now, Aries, though, will often stand up for themselves, but for others as well. And I think when you look at Aries as well, is that they often, they can become annoyed, I think, sometimes at being in a subordinate or a subservient type role. I think a lot of it can go back to the fact that Pisces often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Aries. So even in situations when Aries is in a subordinate role, I think what it is they often like to exhibit leadership traits and characteristics, even if it's just leading by example. They often, if they're in a position where they're really in a subservient role, at their place of employment. I think they often need that certain independence and that certain freedom, because they often will not work well in situations where they have to answer to somebody. Aries is the sign where really they're even, I mean, where they are just seem like they are meant to be a leader. Remember, it is the first sign of the zodiac. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I mean, often in a group situation and when they're walking with people, Aries often likes to lead and walk in front of everybody else, be that leader of that pack, so to speak. Aries can become annoyed with an authority figure being overly domineering and controlling or dictatorial. Aries often likes to dictate the course of action, and they often don't like others doing so to them. Another thing that may annoy the zodiac sign Aries is really getting involved with tedious, time-consuming, or protracted projects. I see Aries as often being the sign that starts things, and even and Taurus is the one that often culminates often with Taurus. Taurus is the one that could finish. And I think a lot of times when you have like Aries energy, even astrologically through transits, I think Aries energy is about that initiation and that enterprise, where Taurus often can be that energy that could eventually finish what the Aries energy had actually started. But anyway, the thing too about Aries too, what can annoy them and aggravate them very strongly, is I think it really is about maybe people that come across as overly, superficial and charming, but the charming being superficial. That is what can really exasperate Aries as well. I think phony charm is something that Aries can strongly detest. A lot of this is attributed, I believe, to Libra being the opposite sign of Aries. And don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of Libras have a very natural charm, and it's not always phony or superficial, but in a very negative manifestation for Libra, I believe it can be. And this is what can rebuff Aries and make them very annoyed. So anyway, also another thing about Aries too is what can strongly annoy the zodiac sign Aries is really, I think, also compromise and negotiation. Remember, it has to do with Libra being the opposite sign of them. And even though Aries is not a fixed sign, they could be very single-minded and headstrong. And sometimes they could be a little bit transparent and somewhat oblivious to others' points of view. And besides, compromise and negotiation can simply be too time-consuming for Aries. And another thing Aries despises, really is annoyed at, is I think things that are too cumbersome as far as being overly detail oriented, because it goes back to the thing about things that annoy Aries that could be very time consuming and very painstaking. And Aries, I mean, it really would not be the best, I don't think, at a job like computer programming or data entry, because it requires being punctilious with details. That's more up Virgo's alley, which is interesting, which gets me to this other point that Virgo, as many of you may know, is inconjunct Aries by sign. So they're obviously in a relationship. It's hard for them to be compatible and have a rapport. It's often about an adjustment, because Virgo likes to do things, cover the painstaking details, where Aries really will often not want to be bothered doing something where where it would be required to have to be very detail oriented. Aries really can have an anathema to things that are that require being attentive to excessive details. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for what annoys Aries, and stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about what annoys Taurus. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.